Well, it's that time again, and this time, we got some much more simple things to talk about. Isn't that lovely? We're not going to overfluff what's happening on this one, but we will discuss some concepts in this video that will prepare us for future projects later down the line. So without wasting too much time, let's just dive straight into it. So to start off, if you recall from last time, our neighborhood situation has become increasingly difficult, and so, by escalating to meet force with greater force, we need to increase our own combat power, and we can't do that without some military science. To start with, we copy our earlier designs once again, but with a twist. Instead of requiring 2 inputs, we actually need 3 inputs. So a center feed design can work, but we're just going to be switching to an outer feed instead. You'll also notice here something a little bit strange. I've got 1 assembly machine for walls, 4 assembly machines to make the red magazines, and 5 assembly machines for the grenades. Later, I add a few more grenades, but that's beside the point. So why do I do this? Because we look at the total input of the machines receiving and we try to match our production as close to those numbers as we can, with a little bit of tolerance considering that we can't always be perfectly on the ball. We've covered the math to do this before, so if you're unsure of the number of machines and why I came to this conclusion, I encourage you to do the math yourself. It's a good experience, and you may find that I made a mistake and didn't catch something that you can improve on. Once we have all of this hooked up and we're feeding into the labs, we are ready to fix up a couple of other things. One of the biggest things for us is our lack of iron ore. Our initial patch is finally showing signs of depletion and needs a bit of a boost. Fortunately, we have a second patch very close to our south, but that one also won't last very long in the end. We'll bring some miners down and draw a belt up to the existing line, feeding it like we've shown before. However, we ensure that the first mine gets priority loading onto the smelter stacks. We do this to ensure we still deplete the first patch at a normal rate, but we don't needlessly kill the flow to our smelters for it. It's a win-win. Speaking of smelter stacks, it's time to look at the next most natural step of evolution. Yes, it's that time where we finally free ourselves from the chains of coal and ore lines and enter the stage of ore-only lines using electric smelters that have no need for us to toss coal into. Because of this, we will not only smelt at a similar rate to our steel furnace, we will also be reducing our pollution per minute significantly. Due to the size of the electric smelters, we can't upgrade them in place like we did when we went from stone to steel furnace conversions. As such, I highly recommend you have some construction drones and some roboports set up before doing this step, with some yellow boxes to store materials taken from the retrofitting project. This will make it much easier for you in the future, and we can recirculate most of the items back into production later. After that, we take the time to research tanks and their munitions, the regular and explosive shells. We are going to use explosive shells primarily because they're good at clearing nests with area of effect damage, and tanks are durable enough to plow through most obstacles without the need for caution a car usually requires. This makes cleaning out biter nests significantly easier, and this method will remain viable for many hours after this. And then we get to the main topic that I want to discuss today, which is the expansion of the rail network and some of the logic that we use to control the trains. This logic, while redundant and unnecessary at our current stage, is important to get into the habit of using and understanding at this time because of how we'll be scaling later on. We could of course just make train stations that go from A to B and assign trains to those solely, but that would give us more work if we decide to keep the factory later on, especially when we start to expand greater and greater. Plus, if you're on space age, getting to this point where you get the rocket off of the planet doesn't mean that you're done. It means that you've exited the early game. So it becomes even more vital for space age to have a very good solid foundation on novice. Regardless of whether you're on space age or vanilla, both of these I would like to reinforce the idea that we want to keep things scalable and continuously grow even after we finally launch a rocket off of the planet. Alright, well, thank you, past editor me. I will take it from here now. I felt like it was better to come in at the end to show some of the logic with all this in a more almost live recording session here, because there's a lot to talk about when it comes to how you control your train. So I wanted to start at first with the actual iron output stations themselves. So the biggest thing with these to keep in mind is that these ones we want to essentially hook up to the train stop, this iron pickup right here, and we want to control the train limit. You can see right here I have a set train limit right there. And this doesn't really matter right now because we don't have a lot of trains on the network. But later this will become important, and as it comes up I'll explain why more. But suffice it to say, get into the habit of doing stuff like this now because it'll help you out later. So here's how it works. You notice over here, first off, that it has a train limit of 4 right now. So if we go from front to back, we can see here that this combinator is an arithmetic that's set to take the X value and divide it by 2 to then output the L signal. So where's X coming from? X is coming from here. We're taking B plus T to make X. Well, where are those coming from? These are coming from right here. B and T as a decider, basically, which then comes all the way back over here to T, which is the product of each, which is just a generic thing. Basically, we're saying all of the ore divided by 2,000, which this is the cargo value of any given train. At least one cargo wagon, I should say. So we have T, which represents top, and B, which represents bottom. Both doing the same thing. We're just reading all of these, and we're dividing all of the content in here by 2,000. Because you can see here that we'll be able to sustain 8,000. So there's a little bit off the top there. We don't say 4, we don't say 5, excuse me. We say 4 because luckily this will round down. It doesn't round up. It only does what it will actually return. Whatever remainder is there is just kind of not exactly discarded, but for the purposes of our combinators, it's ignored for the most part. So rounding down is a good mechanic for us in this regard. So now working from bottom back, we know that this is the bottom set of chests. This is the top set of chests. So we're reading both of these and determining how much of these we have. We then look over here and say, as long as we have enough in each of them to sustain one train, that is then what we take and then allow this number to go through. Basically, we don't allow just one of them to go through. This is something that, this isn't exactly necessary, but this just kind of helps me to feel better about it, where I just take the values of the front and the back, I put them together into this number, which we then divide again to then give us the output. Basically what this means is that if I have an uneven number, I'm still going to set a train limit that should adhere to the lowest possible value. In all my testing, I haven't had a problem with a setup like this. So I've been keeping it because, again, I just haven't found any problems with it. So then again, we come over here, we take that value, X, which is just an arbitrary number, you can put whatever you want for that, divide by 2, and then output L, right here. That L signal is what then gets sent over here. So, fairly straightforward. The whole reason for this is to essentially, what you used to have to do is you would come over here and essentially enable or disable the train stop. A while ago, they made it so that you could actually set the train limits. I don't recall exactly when, but this has just been the case for a while. Very useful to do this. This actually is a lot more granular, and it's a lot more controllable with way less problems to do a set train limit here. So that's how that works. This is just all completely local logic that will control the train, stop itself, and then trains will react to this based on that information. So, let's take the car down to the actual receiving station and talk about that a little bit. Okay, so some of the sharp people among you might have seen, I don't remember if it was exactly in it, but the footage might have shown some combinators over here at one point for controlling the actual input of the train. I decided because of the complexity of that, essentially, I want to not do that and leave this as bare-bone basic as possible, because that is a topic that will come up much later and is a little bit more advanced than we want to have at the current stage we're in now. So what we have right here is just a very basic setup where we're feeding in some coal. In fact, I should add some more coal to that. And we're fueling the trains as they come and unload their ore here. And something I should have mentioned before is this is the secondary mine that's come in, which is now the primary mine. And when we come over here, we have it set so that the input of this is prioritized going down the line here. It's not exactly perfect. It does have a couple of problems here, so it can have issues like this where we just kind of sit here and we're not loading up all the trains, which isn't a huge problem necessarily, but it is something that we want to keep in mind. So we can make improvements to that later, but it's not a huge issue at this time. But essentially what we have down here is we have 2 trains that go to this iron drop, which does not have a train limit because it's going to be limited by our outposts for the most part right now. The big thing I wanted to talk about with these is, in order to add more trains to this network, it used to be in the past that you would have to come in here and you'd have to add a locomotive and then do your cargo wagons like this, put them down, then you'd have to come in here and set everything manually. I'm happy to tell you that is no longer the case. You no longer have to do that now that we have logistic groups. Specifically with train groups, what you can do is when you put down a new train such as this, you'll see up here that I have my first train group, which has a number 2 right here, which indicates that there are 2 trains a part of this group. This is the only group that we have right now. If I were to take this and unassign it, and remove all of this, this is what a standard train would look like. Maybe we give it a little bit of fuel, maybe it's got some stuff in it already, doesn't really matter. But right now this doesn't do anything at all. Versus this train, which does have a couple of things queued up. And it's very simple, very basic right now. We simply go to our iron pickup, which is all the way to the north, and we wait for a full cargo of inventory. Once that's done, we then go to the iron drop, and we wait until we're completely empty, and then we'll go along the rails, up and out, and it's a nice round trip with no obstacles in the way. But if I want to add another train because I need more, all I have to do is add a train like this, simply come up, go to my first train group, click enter, and just like that, all of our settings have applied. What's also going to be interesting to note is you can actually change all of these settings for every train. So for example, I'm going to go to the iron drop and I'm going to remove it. And notice that the train I didn't select is already on its way out, as is that one. So if I were to select that train now along the way, you'll see it has the exact same settings as this one that we selected. So now if I come over here and I go to the iron drop and then re-add the empty cargo command, you'll see here that this is first going to go all the way up to the iron pickup, as will the second train, and see all of our signals coming up here in the way. That's very important to note. And also note right here how we have the spacing for 2 trains. Not necessary for right now, but it is a good practice to get into for this particular stage of your expansion. And we'll see right here that slowly we're going to load up, and I'll just let that do its thing, and we'll wait for it to behave, basically. Okay. As we can see here, the train is now going to correctly leave, and I incorrectly did not put a signal up here, so this one did not even go up to the next stop like it was supposed to. See that all that hang time right there? Very bad. Very bad. I need to improve that. So I caught a mistake that I made earlier, and I'll go through and fix that on my own time. It won't be a big deal. But now you'll notice, again, this train is now going to come down and load up into the iron drop, nice and cleanly, just like how we said it before. And we'll have some of the cargo is going to be coming out here, because obviously there was a little bit left over here. And these ones have not been getting used because we're trying to go and eat through this, so... Like I said, little improvements that can be made. But that is how we're doing this. So essentially, we're treating the train stop right here as its own depot. So because of this, we can actually add a third train if we really want to get spicy with it. And I think we'll go ahead and do that just to fully cement the idea here. So we need to go around and gather a couple materials, and we'll make this really quickly, and then show you how it works when you put it down. Okay, now that I got a couple things for this, the way that I am going to choose to do this is I am actually going to send this on its way to go and get more iron and have it on standby just in case. So I set up like this, I give it some fuel, fill it up, and then I'm just going to simply, just like we showed before, this is a brand new train, I'm just going to come up, go to my first train group, and I'm just going to click on apply change. And ta-da! It's all set to go. I'll just turn it to automatic, and off it goes. The other thing that you can do with these train groups, which is also really neat, I'll show right here, is if you want to get really fancy, you can actually change the color of these. So rather than using a destination stop color, which is fairly common, we can actually come in here, we can change these a little bit. Let's do something a little bit more iron-y. So we want something like a little bit more blue. We'll do like kind of a lightish blue, something like that, kind of similar to what we're wearing right now. So we'll do that. And usually I thought that that would change for all of them, but I guess it didn't. Maybe they changed that. I think it used to have the color go across. Maybe they didn't do that anymore for some reason. Well, that's a little interesting. I could have swore that that changed across, but regardless, what we can do instead of that is we just come over here, shift right click, and then shift left click. And that will copy the color over, at least. It's weird that the color doesn't change over. I would have thought that the color would meet up with everything else there, but we learn something new every single day. Yes, you can change the color of the trains, you can change the color of the stops as well, if you would like to have them change their color based on the stops that they're going to. Sometimes that can be good for visually referring to some of these things, but that is the essential basics of how these trains work. And there was somebody that had a question on the oil. And let me just go show the difference that I do with the oil stop in terms of the liquid calculations. So over here with the liquid, all we did is very simple here. We just hook up to every one of these tanks, which each of these is 25,000, so 50,000 is enough for a single fluid wagon. And I'm only doing single fluid wagon trains, so I divide it by 50,000, which then gives us an output of L for one train. Same setup as we did with the ore. Very, very basic. I did a little bit more with the ore because there's going to be more that goes into the ore later on. With your liquid things like this, these ones are usually very straightforward. There's not a whole lot that you need to worry about with them. And that's going to be it for this episode. Like I said, it was a very straightforward episode. Just kind of regarding some of the basics about trains. We are going to be using trains a lot more frequently. You're probably going to be seeing more things such as this, which is a combination of a U-turn with a straight through going like this. We have to do a couple of little signal things with that. And I will do my best to explain everything, but if there's anything that I miss or that you're confused about, we are able to go back and revisit things at any given time. I want this to be as transparent as possible. I want people to get as much as they can get out of this. This is meant for absolute beginners, but even if you're an intermediate player that we're reaching something that you haven't encountered before or something that doesn't quite make sense to you, this would be the time to do it right here in this kind of midsection towards the later end of it, because we're going to start wanting to do more optimizations. We're going to want to start to think about how we actually do our factory a little bit better now. But with all that being said, thank you guys for sticking this long into the series. It's been a blast making it, and I really hope that this is providing some level of benefit to you guys. Once again, don't forget that we also stream live on Twitch and on YouTube every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at around 1930 Mountain Standard or Mountain Daylight Time, depending on the time of year that it is. And we're always open to questions. We're not always playing Factorio live, but quite often we are, and even if we're not, we're always open to taking questions and answering questions as frequently as we can, and delving into topics that maybe don't always make it to the video, so I highly encourage that. We also have a Discord server. If you ever want to get on there and talk about Factorio or other automation games, you just want to hang out, or if you have any questions that would need a little bit more detail, we can always hop into a Discord call and I can try to walk you through some of the things that you may be struggling with. So with all that being said, once again, thank you guys so much for being here. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't before. It really does help us out. I'm hoping, against all hope, to reach 1,000 subscribers by the end of the year. I don't know if we're really going to make it. I feel like it's a very lofty goal, but I'm hopeful. I'm a bit of an optimist with that. So, with all that being said, for the third time, I'll see you guys in the next one. I hope you have a great night, morning, evening, whatever it is for your time zone at this current time, and we'll catch you next time. Have a good one.